Neither Marcus nor Tabby are a professional broadcaster. This will soon become evident. The detective inspectors. The detective inspectors. The detective inspectors. The detective inspectors.
Hello, welcome to the podcast that really needs to start doing some sort of basic quality control on the programs that it watches as source material. My name is possibly Marcus Braeburn.
Hey, I'm Tabby.
And together we are
The
Detective Inspectors.
Hooray! Hooray.
That'll do.
That is our raison d'etre. The absolute, the barest minimum of quality control.
Using the that'll do,
Yep.
that'll do system.
It's done us all right so far in pretty much every aspect of our lives. So
True enough. It worked for the producers of the program we're watching today.
it certainly did.
So yeah.
Would you like me to tell you what barest minimum of a television program we were watching today? Then I will do that.
Fire away.
Excellent. Okay, so this series ran from 1974 to 1974. So you can tell that we're dealing with a proper success. And
When you, I think when you hit perfection, you just have to stop. Why make more episodes when you have nailed the genre in such spectacular fashion?
No, actually, yeah, you're right. Sometimes less is more, and I could certainly have done with less of this. But
You and me both.
so this episode first aired on the 19th of December 1974. Called The Secret Garden, which is, as we'll find out, a little bit of a sort of like misnomer, and episode 13 of Father Brown.
Father Brown.
The detective inspectors.
Okay, a slight technical hitch there. You may have missed some of the podcast gold we just laid out for you, but a
It
recording issue has occurred.
It was amazing, so apologies for that.
Yeah, if you did miss any at all, then it was definitely the funniest stuff that we've ever done. So Father Brown definitely falls into the religious busybody detective subgenre. He's
does.
played by Kenneth Brown, big Hollywood star in the 50s. Was in some
really?
quite notable movies. Yeah, he was in A Night to Remember.
Oh.
He was in something else that I saw the name of that surprised me, a big famous film.
That you couldn't remember.
Hold on. He was also in, I can't be bothered. Hold on, this is good podcast.
Again with the professionalism.
Yeah. No, he was in something that you've definitely heard of and would go, wow.
Okay.
He was in The 39 Steps.
Oh, okay. The Hitchcock.
The film
Yeah.
by Alfred Hitchcock.
Yes.
Anyway, this is very much, Father Brown is very much at the tail end of his career. He did a few things after this, but not a great deal. This episode finds Father Brown in France at the home of the Parisian chief of police, would you say?
Yeah, I couldn't quite. He was either like a judge or a chief of police, or he was someone of authority who lived in like a massive chateau.
A chateau that looks like a medieval castle.
Made out of cardboard.
Made out of cardboard. And made out of cardboard yesterday. This is a building that looks to have been made 300 years ago and not aged one single day.
Could you enlighten me and tell me one defining feature about this about this building?
Well, there is, and I'm not sure we mentioned it earlier, so I'll mention it again. There is a secret garden, which is not a secret. It's a massive garden with a huge wall around it. There is no way in or out of the garden. There is also only one door into this house. There is no tradesman's entrance.
No front garden.
Front garden.
Which really seems to. I couldn't quite work out whether it was whether it really pissed off Father Brown or whether he just couldn't understand the concept of the fact that there was a house without a fucking front garden.
He's very, very perplexed about that fact, isn't he?
Yeah. So bear that in mind, because I think that's going to play heavily into in the plot.
I think so. I think the fact of the matter is what they've done here in this programme is created in the most obvious exposition-heavy manner a situation where the people in the house are the people in the house, and there is no one else that can possibly be involved in this plot.
Yeah. But the thing, this is obviously it's a well used trope. It's very much kind of like the like Agatha Christie sort of thing. But you never really most other sort of programs like detective sort of mysteries, they don't really have to hammer home the point quite as much as they do it. Like, you can just take it for granted that these people who are in the house are the suspects because they're the only fucking people there.
But they do layer it on enormously thickly that is the case.
Yeah.
And we are in danger of layering it on even more thickly now. But that's okay because it's important. It's obviously important.
It is. I mean, I am going to remind you sort of like periodically through the recording about the about the architecture and design of house and said garden.
Yeah, particularly the garden, please.
Yes.
I think that's a bit I might forget. So if you could constantly remind me about the garden.
Yep, the least secret garden. The least secret garden that also is... doesn't seem to have any kind of paths and just has random hedgerows like that people have to kind of stagger through. I'm not. It's
maybe it's true. Maybe the secret about the garden is there's no gardener. Maybe it should be called the Secret Gardener, but they only had limited characters.
Well, it would be kind of nice if the gardener was the person that died. It would explains why everything's so fucking overgrown.
Well, maybe it was.
That's true. So why don't you take us through the what there is of the plot and the characters?
Okay. Well. Basically, the whole thing seems to centre around there's a guy called Louis Becker who is about to be executed, and the chief of police, whose name is Aristide Valentin, it's his house. He is upset about this. He basically caught this guy and got him brought to justice, but now is upset that he's being executed, despite the fact that appears to be the law in France at the time.
We just to say we kind of hear about this because he's reading a newspaper with an article about himself in it. Did you happen to notice the name of the newspaper?
La Guillotine.
The Guillotine. So. It's effectively like it's effectively like picking up a news. Oh, it's the Daily Gas Chamber. Like, that is not the name. That is not the name of a newspaper.
I think it might have been. I think historically there may have been a newspaper called La Guillotine.
Really?
I believe so. Yeah. I'm plucking that from the air, but I do believe that may have been the case at some point. Anyway.
They've always cut the headlines.
Oh dear. See, I tried to interrupt you then so you couldn't make that bad joke, but you went ahead and made it anyway.
Yes.
I went your want.
I went ahead.
Okay, let's all take a breath.
Yeah.
Okay. Where was I? See, I've lost my track now. That joke was so funny. I can't remember where I was.
Sarky bastard.
So anyway, he goes off. He's having a dinner party, basically, this chief of police, and he has invited what can only be described as an assortment of twats around to be his guests. And I guess the quickest way to do this is to run through the guests, which I have helpfully listed, and we can talk about
Excellent.
briefly each of the guests and what they bring to the dinner party.
It's a whole smorgasbord of cuntery.
It is. That's very nicely put. So you've got Aristide Valentin, the chief of police.
Yep.
He is the chief of police.
And host of said gathering.
Yeah. At one point, he goes off to see the condemned man and tell the condemned man that he tried to save him, which he thinks is going to, in some way, be some source of comfort to the man that's about to have his head chopped off.
Absolutely comforting. There's also a weird scene where he's got like a flower in his lapel. Decides to take it off because, condemned men don't deserve to smell flowers or something.
Well, he doesn't want to see it. He thinks it would be tactless to go and see the man that he arrested and got convicted of murder with a flower in his lapel.
He's got better things on his mind.
The thing that's tactless is going to see the man that you convicted and is now about to have his head cut off. And then you've got a flower in your lapel as well. It's really neither here nor there.
Perhaps you could take him the latest edition of the Guillotine. Just to really fucking hammer it home.
I thought you might want to look at La Football results. So you've got him. You've then got Julius Brain, Mr. Brain, calling Mr. Brain.
Yeah.
He is
I know what
an
I want.
American.
I want
he is an American.
He is not, though. He is the worst American. The crappiest accent.
This is one of my problems with this programme. There are people who are supposed to be French, people who are not supposed to be French. Some of the people who are supposed to be French are speaking in the hello French accent style, and other people who are supposed to be French, like the police commissioner, is just talking in his normal voice. It's like, did they just say, do it if you want, don't do it if you don't want?
Yeah, fuck it, yes. No one cares. No one's going to be watching this in what, sort of 38 years' time. It's...
I can tell you for a fact it's 43 years' time because this was first aired just a few days before I was born.
Oh, isn't that nice?
Yeah. It's nice to see that I've aged better than Father Brown.
Oh, I don't know.
Well, I've certainly aged better than most of the people in it.
That's, most of the people in it are dead.
My point exactly. So he's an American gazillionaire, I think, and he is apparently in the habit of giving loads of money to religions. You've then got...
Multiple religions.
Multiple religions. You've then got the Galloways, Lord Galloway, Lady Galloway, and their daughter, Lady Margaret Graham. They are posh.
He's basically like the Major in Fawlty Towers, but more of a dick.
Very much so. Very much so. The Major in Fawlty Towers was actually in the prepisode.
Oh really? Oh okay.
The guy in the tin hat. Did you watch episode 1? Yeah.
Oh fuck! I knew I recognised him. Yeah.
He was the Major in Fawlty Towers. So good link.
Nicely done.
You then have got a Foreign Legion commander, and that is Tywin Lannister from Game of Thrones.
And
his name is Commandant Neil O'Brien.
He's looks like a confused child in a uniform.
Is that your comment on war?
My comment on war.
Anywho's, he basically was in he was in Lord Galloway's regiment and was in love with Lord Galloway's daughter, the Lady Margaret Graham, and he absconded from a court-martial in suspicious circumstances and joined the French Foreign Legion because why not?
Yep, a fine fighting force.
You then have the Duchess of Mont Saint Michel, who is apparently Aristide Valentin's mistress.
Right.
She is also quite posh.
With the aforementioned Louise Brooks Bob. That's
her.
Yeah.
That's her, yeah, Bob lady. You then have Dr. Bernard Simon. You know, he's a doctor because he's got glasses on.
And looks a little bit like a hamster, so that's the only thing I've been able to. It's the only thing I've been able to think about when I'm watching this.
I was literally about to mention something about his slightly hamsterish teeth that just poke out between his lips like they're looking for a peanut.
I don't want to rodent shame people, but fuck me.
He does have that look.
Yeah.
You then have got Beaumont, the assistant. He is a Frenchman that is attempting to put on a French accent. And Ivan, the butler.
Yep, he's also doing a bit of an accent, I think.
When he speaks, he doesn't really have a lot to say.
No.
So basically what happens is, there's not a whole lot that happens at this point. They are all at the dinner party, they have the dinner. They're in the enclosed house, and it must be made clear again that there is a garden into which there is no access except for through the house.
What, you mean? There's no gate or door into this garden?
No, you'd think there would be, but there isn't.
But how would people get in?
Well, through the house. You've got to go through the house.
Fucking crazy. These froggies, as they are referred to in this episode.
Yeah, I would like to stick up for Tabby there and say that he is just paraphrasing Lord Galloway when he uses the offensive term. I'm not even going to say it. Beep. It's still not cool to repeat it, even when you hear other people use it, Tabby.
But what about when I hear it in all those rap songs? Can I sing it then?
It's all about concept, Fogger.
Context.
Yeah. What did I say?
Concept. But
yeah.
we can run with that.
Yeah. My Frogger. Okay. And basically they have dinner. The women go off, again, as is the tradition in these times, are sent off to do something with the other while the men smoke cigars and drink port. The Lady Margaret Way and the daughter goes into the garden. An argument then happens amongst the men in which the chief of police gets called away. An argument carries on. The Lord Galloway and Tywin Lannister have an argument.
Yeah.
And Tywin Lannister goes outside where the woman is that he was in love with, blah, 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 and they have a little chat and walk around the garden, do they not?
They do. I think it should be pointed out that the Major hates...
I thought you were going to say that the garden didn't have a door.
I was getting there.
You managed to resist.
But now you mention it, it really should be pointed out that no entry, no exit apart from through the house. So
exactly. Thank you.
Do not forget that. As you call him, Tywin Lannister, the French Foreign Legion, kind of very, very wooden acting person who really just looks incredibly fucking awkward throughout the entire thing.
Charles Dance, you would expect better from him, but he is extraordinarily wooden in this.
Oh fuck, is it actually Charles Dance?
It's actually Tywin Lannister, did you not realise?
No, I thought you were just trying to be fun.
No, that was actually a piece of research that I did.
Oh.
Well, when I say research, I mean see a man's face, recognise it to be a certain man, and then refer to that certain man as who he actually is. You can call it research if you want. I prefer not to dress it up with so many whistles and bells.
It's more than I fucking did for this. So your ability to recognise people is more effort than I've put in thus far. So
thank you very much. Recognition at last.
So tell me about this garden.
Yeah, there's no door.
Good.
In through the house, out through the house, etc. and so on. So basically, they're having a big chat in the garden, and then everyone disappears for a bit. the American goes off to have a cigar because he doesn't like the smell of cigar smoke.
Yep, because I mean that's a proper curse. That's so like.
I think that's the worst line of dialogue that has ever been written in any television programme that I've ever seen. He lights up a huge fat cigar. He says, "I love a cigar, but I don't like cigar smoke," and wanders off with the cigar.
Yeah, it's like, fucking that's following me. I can't. Why can't I get away from the stench of this fucking cigar?
I appear to have failed the grasp. I appear to have failed to grasp the context of holding something in my hand and it still being in my hand.
Yeah, this thing that I've literally set on fire to create smoke, which I will inhale.
Yeah. I'm happy to inhale it.
Yeah. Hey, do you know what's right next to your fucking mouth? Your nose.
So you did do some research. Okay, moving on. So, he goes off to have a cigar. The Lord Galloway falls asleep, and then basically the wife of Lord Galloway, Lady Galloway, wakes up Lord Galloway. He goes storming outside because he realises that his daughter is outside with Tywin Lannister, and they separate. She goes inside, and then, to cut a long story short, after some running around in the pathless garden with no door, that Lord Galloway falls over a body which appears to have had its throat cut.
But so
it hasn't.
Dr. Hamster comes, and he he decides to move the body, and what do we find?
Well, they all do. Which just on a serious police note here, which is what we're here for, it's worth noting that you've got a whole bunch of idiots at a dinner party. If you find a dead person in the garden, you do not pick them up and carry them into the house. The police, I am imagining, from the experience I've gleaned from watching a lot of this shit for this podcast, they quite like to find the body where the body came to rest.
This is true, but again, 1920s. Plus, also you've got like the chief of police there. Like he can vouch for it.
He can roll anywhere he wants.
Yeah. Basically, he can get someone hung, and then just gloat.
Pop in to see them for gloating.
Sorry about that.
Just popping down for gloating. Sorry, it's copyright Blackadder. So basically, they a few of them grab the body to pick the body up. Only when they pick the body up, the head remains where it is on the ground.
Which, total honesty, I fucking whooped with glee when I saw that. It was actually really good. Plus, also the effect was amazing because they didn't actually use like a fake head. They used like a real head, but then sort of like had like a cutaway of like the of the stump, effectively. So it actually for 1974 on a relatively low budget program looked fucking good.
Relatively low budget, completely piss poor. At this point, they
Sorry, is that the tagline for our podcast?
It might as well be.
Yeah.
I don't know, not that low budget. I spend quite a lot of money on snack.
That's true. Did you
say
snack
with an N?
Yeah. I was just wanted to clarify that.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. So basically, then they go in. The Lord Galloway wants to accuse Tywin Lannister. Obviously, the daughter pipes up and says that. We should say the body of the man in the garden is not one of the guests.
No one knows who he is.
No one knows who he is. So somehow a man has managed to get into this impenetrable. Did we mention that there's only one door into the house, and there's no way into the garden apart from through the house.
That is correct. They also make mention that the walls are very high and have spikes on the top. Because in this world, no one has ladders or blankets to put over the spikes, so that's that should be made clear that
or shovels with which one could dig potentially a tunnel underneath the garden wall.
So, lest there be any doubt left in your minds as to just how impenetrable this fortress of a house is. That's how.
That's how much. So he's no one that we know, and so basically they have a big old parlour scene. Everyone's shouting, and to cut a long story short, the Lord Galloway is insistent that Tywin Lannister, the French Foreign Legion, did it. The daughter provides him with an alibi. Then his sword turns up covered in blood, but they find that outside, and the American has disappeared.
Yep, the American's got. So it should be noted that they have a ridiculous conversation of what could possibly have cut this man's head off. And it's like, what about a double-handed sword? Conveniently enough, the American, when he goes off to try and escape from the smell of his own cigar, he starts dicking around, and that's like, you're a guest in this fucking house. He goes over, picks up a sword, there are a pair of double-handed swords on the wall.
Like any good medieval castle.
Yeah, made of cardboard. Picks up sword, dicks about with it for a bit, just dumps it back on the fucking table. Doesn't bother putting it back on the wall. Imagine if
he does put it back on the wall, doesn't he?
No. He just dumps it on the table and picks up the other guy's saber.
Yeah.
But imagine if someone came to your house, was in a room on their own, took a picture off your wall, looked at it for a bit, dicked about, and just dumped it on the floor. It's like, what the fuck?
That could happen with my pictures, but I keep all my weapons and armoury in a locked cupboard. I said cupboard, I meant cupboard.
That was your mobile storage unit.
Obviously, apart from the ones I keep strapped about my person all the time.
Of course.
So yeah, basically the American has disappeared, and the sword is found outside the house, despite the fact that the door is still locked, and the butler says that there's no way the door could have been opened, and that pretty much is where we get to.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's covered.
I think we've done a first A, grade A job there.
Well, I don't know. Don't lose your head. I thank you.
Join us after this short piece of music where Tabby and I will somehow attempt to work out what the fuck is going on in this dreadful programme.
I have no fucking clue.
Felony, homicide.
Welcome back to the podcast. Predictions. Tabby, why don't you tell me exactly what happens in the second half of Father Brown?
Yes, why don't I?
Over to you.
So I'm gonna set a scene. There's a garden. There's no way.
Fuck off.
Okay, so we're meant to think that the crap American did it, because he's a terrible house guest. He fucks with your shit, and then just leaves without saying thank you. So it's clearly not him.
Obviously not. Can I, before having said over to you, can I have one of my trademark interruptions? There are points that we have not mentioned, which I think are crucial to the plot in terms of what has occurred.
Please help me.
Number one, I think the flower is of interest.
They certainly make a big deal of it, like even actually having like a different cutaway shot where the butler adjusts it in its little vase.
Like it's a big thing. It's obviously something, that flower. Secondly, Father Brown around the body, and quite rightly so. The chief of police tells him to shut the fuck up when he mentions it. But Father Brown finds some small twigs which are chopped up, scattered around the body, and that appears to be Father Brown, the great detective, who I must say is hardly in this at all. That seems to be his only clue.
He does fuck all. There's a scene where he does some almost inaudible muttering, and then he finds some twigs. He also tells someone to go outside, and that's it.
There is, on the muttering point, there is a lot of muttering. There's a lot of things happen, and then off camera, all the other cast members go, I don't know.
Right. Okay. So I've got a theory about this, because this is basically they're clearly stage actors.
This could be a play. I mean, this is a point of mine as well. Sorry, but this is basically a play because it's all in one location, and there is no way in or out, as we may have mentioned. But over to you. Sorry about that.
It would fucking close on its opening night.
The reviews were dreadful.
Father Brown has his twigs. I've forgotten where I was.
Sorry, that was my fault. So there's that. There's that, and that. There's also the fact that the person in the garden is wearing dress clothes, almost as though he was dressed for dinner.
Yes. So it's clearly not the gardener. But
it's the American. The dead man in the garden is the American. This is my theory. The dead man in the garden is the American for reasons best known to the people that wrote this plot. I do not know why. But the head, which is on the dead man, was smuggled in by that bread boy who came in with the bread basket, and Father Brown remarked that there was no tradesman's entrance for Narfanar. And I think for some reason the chief of police wanted the American dead, and I think
swap the bread for head,
and then put the different. He got the dead bread head from the dead head bread basket, and he put that on the American's body so that no one knows he murdered the American.
I mean, it's a theory. I commend you for actually making something, because I would guarantee that that's probably better than whatever they.
And I reckon the twigs were in some way. So say you bought some vegetables or something, and they were laid in the basket on a layer of twigs and leaves to keep them from banging around. I reckon the head was wrapped up in twigs or something, and so.
Listen to what you're saying.
I know it sounds like the ramblings of a deranged lunatic, but
it does.
But I'd like to hear your better version then. Go on. Off you go. Over to you. No more interruptions. Here we go.
I genuinely have no idea. Because we don't know who this person is. This mystery person has no backstory.
Yeah. We don't know who's dead. I mean, that's the thing. I think it is the American, but otherwise we don't know who it is at this point.
It would, yeah. I mean, it would make sense. But because there's a sort of point made where Lannister, like his saber is lost. And it's his saber that's been used. They think it's him. Clearly not him.
I mean, they're all red herrings. The Duchess, of all the people there,
I'm gonna say it's the girl. Because I have no idea. She seems the least likely person to do it.
Okay.
So just going by that.
Well, I think it was the chief of police because he was called out of the dinner party. Kind of maybe 20 minutes or something before this murder must have happened because the body's still warm, etc. So he gets called out. So I reckon it's definitely the guy whose house it is, and he has somehow worked this out. He somehow set this whole dinner party up so that he can off someone that he finds displeasing to him.
Yeah.
Possibly the American.
Because that American is a terrible guest. But also he's a terrible host because he fucks off for a large amount of time anyway.
He's hardly ever there.
Yeah. What a collection of contemptible
Indeed.
people.
Present company included.
Inspected.
We're on form today.
Oh, who would have thought that crippling depression could be so fun?
Me? No, it's a serious issue. Well, listen, let's get back to it, because the listener is literally chomping at the bit to
Champing.
Just is it champing?
Yeah.
Fuck off again. Join us after this very short bit of music where Tabby will correct me at least 4 more times.
5 more.
Very good.
The detective inspectors.
Hello. My name's Julius Brain, and I'm a character in this program. My accent is entirely believable.
A genuine American. How lovely to see you. Why not come into my house and just move my shit about?
It'll be my pleasure. See, because I'm an American, I think I own the world, so I'll do whatever I want, including give billions and billions of pounds to the Catholic Church.
Well, try not to lose your head about it.
Ooh. Good stuff. Good stuff. Welcome back to the second half of the podcast, where we, and by we, I mean Tabby and I, Marcus is back, Julius Brain has sadly departed these worlds. Here we are. We've just watched the second half of Father Brown, episode 13.
13, The Not So Secret Garden.
Not So Secret Garden.
Any thoughts or feelings before we get into what happens?
Triumphalism. Is the only one I can think of off the top of my head.
So, I just can't stop thinking about Twigs.
We go back and there's a scene with the body, and it's the police chief and Father Brown. And Father Brown, I think you were counting, weren't you, Tabby, how many times Father Brown mentioned his fucking twigs? 4 times, one scene. What about the twigs? The twigs.
It was all he fucking had. It's like...
It's fair to say it's all he had, but it's also fair to say that he didn't do much in the first half of this, but he did crack this case wide open.
I suppose so, but in the most tenuous of ways. There was no... Get into it and explain what happens, because then I want to kind of tear Father Brown a new arsehole.
Okay. So we go back. There's a big old chat, isn't there, over the body. The Dr. Hamster's got 5 unanswerable questions about the crime, which if I'd been bothered I would have written down, but they basically revisit them later on, don't they?
What I really would have liked, it was like, I've got 1,700 questions for you. And no, the answer to most of them is not fucking twigs.
The twigs is such a lame thing for them to have used as the way that this works out, but
as a way to solve this. But let's get into it. I will say, full credit, you were absolutely right. Nailed it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I take no. Well, we'll get onto it. So
you take masses of pleasure.
But I'm going to do it later.
Oh, okay.
Probably in my closing thoughts.
And as you go to sleep tonight.
Yeah. So basically, the first thing that happens is they go. They've gone through the pockets and they find a dollar bill, a dollar coin, in the pocket of the dead man, which immediately made me think that I was correct and it was Brain. Then what happens? Brain is still missing, and then there's a phone. It basically, to cut a long story short, it cuts to the morning. And the butler Beaumont, or the assistant Beaumont, takes a telephone call, and there's been another murder, and they start talking about how Brain is obviously a homicidal maniac. He somehow escaped and he is killed again.
He's a brainiac.
Oh my god. And so he's obviously killed again, and basically then they get a delivery. They basically reenact the final scene in the popular film Seven, and have a head delivered to the house in a wooden box.
What's in the box?
They then crack open the box, look at the head, and the police chief and his assistant Beaumont look at the head and they're, yeah, that's definitely a head. Sort of examine the head, and it's only Father Brown that says, well, that's Brain's head.
Yep.
And it is quite clearly Brain's head, which made me think that Beaumont was in on it as well, for him to have not recognised who that head was.
You would have thought. I mean, I guess people kind of like maybe take a different look. You don't know this guy particularly well. Most of the men in this look kind of exactly the same.
Yeah.
They're just old men with beards.
I guess if you were shown a severed head in a wooden box, your first thought is, fuck, it's a severed head. And not, that looks a bit like...
My first thought would be, why the fuck are you showing me this? Why?
I came here for dinner. Now I've been forced to stay in your house overnight, and you're now showing me a severed head in a wooden box. See, events have taken a rather unexpected turn.
This is not when I because we're in France, like you can legitimately RSVP, respondez-vous s'il vous plaît.
Good knowledge.
When I respondez-vous s'il vous plaît, I did not sign up for being shown a fucking head in a box.
This was not mentioned on the itinerary, which I was presented with on my arrival.
Nowhere on the menu was severed head. Which is surprising for France, really, because you can eat all sorts of shit there.
Especially at the time, severed head might have been a delicacy.
Absolutely. It's just had grain like massaged down its throat.
Oh my. So yeah, there's a head in a box. It's Brain. It's a whole head, in fact, but it is a head of Brain.
Why? Right, you're writing, Marcus. You're writing a mystery story. It involves decapitation. Your lead character, who will be decapitated. What surname would you give that?
Well, I've got heads on my mind, and I'm thinking a lot about heads. Brain. I guess every head has got a brain in it.
Well, I was going for Mr. Bloody Neck, but you know, it's
Mr. Donald Capitation.
Yeah. And his sister Dee Dee.
Double decapitation.
Yeah.
Double DD decapitation.
Weird porn.
Oh God. So basically, at this point, the police chief continues his. Well, he must have killed someone here and then escaped and then had his own head cut off, and it all goes on. And then at this point, Father Brown I mean, there's a lot of other scenes in this, but they all concern Tywin Lannister,
Twigs,
and Lady Margaret Graham,
and Twigs,
and yes, Twigs, as you say. At one point, I should just tell the listener, I had to stop the watching of the episode and go back because I could not hear what was going on because Tabby just kept shouting Twigs at intervals so regular that I could not hear the dialogue.
I was also eating twiglets. So.
It's true. It's true. It was a lovely coincidence that you happened to be eating twiglets on this episode.
Serendipitous, I would say. Yeah.
I guess if you eat twiglets on every episode, which you do, eventually you're going to eat twiglets on an episode where twigs are the main clue in a double murder.
Well, I said that I just picked this series at random. No, I planned ahead.
That's good. That's good. It's good to see you getting stuck into the research and trying to build yourself a repetitive comedy line that you can use. It would be good if next time it could be more than just shouting the word twigs. But it's a start.
I can't promise anything. It's gonna be the niche kind of. We're only gonna watch programs that involve twigs.
Welcome to the final episode of the Detective Inspectors. Next week, the Twig Inspectors.
Yeah. I've got. There's got to be something there. I just can't do it. Give me a moment.
Okay, I will. Well, I'll tell you what. You try and think of that, and I'll carry on with
you do
the
that.
episode. So that's it, basically. Father Brown's worked it out. Tywin Lannister runs off eventually with the Lord Galloway's daughter. They kind of make their peace. Everything's kind of... but basically all the guests are told they're allowed to leave. They've been kept there overnight. They all leave. Father Brown's worked it out. And Father Brown sits down with the Dr. Hamster and Beaumont with the bad French accent. And Father Brown basically tells them what happened. And that's kind of it, isn't it? And what happened was... This is what's happened is the chief inspector doesn't like Catholics and didn't want Brain to give loads of money to the Catholic Church. So he was showing Brain some sword moves in the garden. And that's how all the twigs got cut off the trees. And then he lopped off the bloke's head. He then threw the head and the sword over the wall and put the head of the man who was murdered earlier onto the body and hacked away at it a few times to make it look like it had just been done.
Right. So, a few problems with this. Why? It's such a massive leap as to sort of like, right, you're dicking about with a sword in the garden. Why on earth, so you cut off some twigs from a tree? Like, who is going to be so impressed in the fact that, oh look, there are twigs on the ground, I'm going to bend over and inspect these fucking twigs.
I'm just going to get down on all fours into being killed position.
Into the prime decapitation mode, and it just it's tenuous. It's tenuous to say the least.
It's tenuous, but that's what happens. That's what happens. He throws the decapitated head of Brain into the river. He throws the sword out into the road. He puts the other head on, and then but basically it was his plan to create a crime that could never be solved, and he would get away with, and the Catholic Church would be a few quid poorer because Brain wouldn't be able to give them all his money unless he had recently changed his will.
The Catholic Church are fine. They've got vast amounts of money. They don't need some fucking idiot American to fund them. Like someone who's like self-professed, like, oh no, I just spunk my money around all the religions, and like Dr. Hamster's like, well, why not give it to science? He's like, oh no, not going to fund science in like the age of the new Enlightenment, where actually people were getting their shit together and actually kind of like, you know, beginning to understand sort of like modern medicine, and obviously like the First World War had sort of like created sort of like a great kind of like a system of kind of like research and everything, and it's like no, just spunk it all and fucking
just give it to the Catholic Church.
Random, it's
insane. It's insane. But at the end, I mean, the programme ends. The daughter runs off with Tywin Lannister. Everyone, Dr. Hamster and Beaumont are shocked that it was the chief of police that did it, and then he basically takes some sort of poison and kills himself, and that is the end of the programme.
That is the end. Yeah, that is the end. We get some. I will say, really like the titles, the title cards and the closing cards. Probably my favourite thing about the episode. It was
good. I mean, it's a rare occasion when one of us guesses it correctly there. I mean, but it was fairly obvious when you think about it. The evening dress was the clue in that first half, that he was dressed. Why is nobody noticing that the man killed in the garden is wearing exactly the same clothes? Not just evening dress, dressed exactly like the man who was sat next to you at dinner a few minutes ago.
I like to picture him kind of like running in circles around the garden, trying to escape his own cigar smoke.
And then it's just a well-timed blow with the sword.
Which would be the perfect time to kill him.
Okay, well let's move to final thoughts after this very short piece of music.
Closing arguments.
So before we move on to final thoughts, let's just quickly cover the predictions. We'll quickly do the prediction, and then we'll quickly do rankings, and then we'll pay perfectly over to final thoughts.
Excellent.
Pardon me. Over to final thoughts. So I was correct. I take no pleasure in that, apart from to say that.
You're as gracious as you are humble.
Luckily, I'm also as good looking as I am modest. No, I was correct. It was a bit. I mean, they didn't mention that the head was smuggled in the bread basket, but that is the only logical explanation for that. So I think I was correct in that regard. But it was Brain, and it was the guy. It was the chief of police that did it. So I would like to go first on the ratings, and I would like to say that anyone who can work out exactly what happened in that plot as succinctly as Father Brown did, as Father Brown did, must be a wonderful, insightful, and intelligent mind. And I did not have the benefit of the TWIGS, remember? So I would like to give Father Brown a detective rating, and we can only judge him on the episode we've watched, and he didn't do much in the episode, but in this episode I would have to give Father Brown an 8 on the detective scale, and me a 9.
Well,
but I'm glad
that you've seen fit to rate yourself in this. So you think you're better than Father Brown? You're 1 point better than Father Brown.
I was not privy to the TWIGS.
You saw just as much as he did.
No, that's true. Okay, an 8 each.
Okay, that seems fair.
I think that's fair enough. But I would like to also say that on the subject of the programme itself, I would like to rate Father Brown a 1.
Oh!
And this is one of those that I will never, ever, ever be watching a second of ever again.
Yes, as my words when we stopped. Well, that's one we don't have to watch again, which is always kind of nice. It's one of the beautiful things about doing this podcast is that you can kind of really separate the wheat from the chaff.
You are ticking off shit programs you don't have to watch again, but then were we not doing this podcast, you would never have had to watch it in the first place.
I might have accidentally stumbled across it and thought, well, you know what I really want to watch this evening? I want to watch a program from the 70s about a fucking idiot Catholic priest.
It happens. You've had a few beers. You go searching on YouTube for religious-based busybody detective series.
Oh, you know me so well.
Well, yes, unfortunately.
Wow.
So how would you rate Father Brown?
Right. I think he was actually pretty fucking useless. Didn't really need to be there. Didn't really do anything.
He solved it.
You know.
He solved it. Without him, the chief of police has got away with it.
Yeah, but sometimes.
You're aware of what this program's called, this podcast, right? The Detective Inspective. He detected that crime and he solved it. You have to give him credit. I know you don't like the Catholic Church. You've made that abundantly clear over every episode we've ever done. But just because he's a priest doesn't mean you can't give him credit for a job well done.
Right. Okay. Two things. Thank you for bringing that up. I was doing my absolute best not to. No like sly digs. But also, no, I'm gonna give him a 5. He was there, but I'm gonna give the program a 7.
What? What?
just to annoy you.
No, it's worked.
It was actually. It wasn't so bad. Like production values were good. Like it's basically kind of based on the special effects of the decapitated head, which I thought was actually pretty good. And like even like I can't say it, like Brain's head. Like it doesn't work.
That looked good. That looked like a good severed head.
Like genuinely good.
It was sufficiently pasty to have believably spent a night in the Seine.
I didn't quite understand why the head went in the river and the sword didn't, and where did they get the sword? Because they got the sword back. I kind of assumed they found that in the garden.
I think he must have flung the head overarm to get distance between the garden and the house, but then tossed the sword underarm because he wanted the sword to be found,
right,
to prove that Brain had done it and then legged it.
Because I would have like just attached the just run the head through with the sword and like tossed it over like a chicken skewer.
That's a good idea.
Not that I've thought about it, you know.
No, that would have been very effective. Why?
Yeah.
You know, why not do that? Why leave the sword to be found? I don't understand. Especially if you then are going to try and make out like another crime has been committed.
Because there was a weird moment where the police chief guy like hands the sword back to Lannister, who kind of puts his hand on it, which is presumably I'm giving you your sword back, but also I have to have it. So it was like sort of like a.
I think it's a ceremonial grasping of the handle, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I kind of thought, oh, you know. People fingerprints have been invented, that would have made sense.
That's what I thought.
Again,
why has he just put his hand on a murder weapon and left his fingerprints on there? I would say one of the reasons I gave this programme a low mark is because in the prepisode, so in episode 1 that we watched to prepare, there is a murder, and it turns out, spoiler alert, if you don't want to know what happens in episode 1 of Father Brown, then look away now. Go and watch it, come back.
If you don't, just get a fucking life. Do something better. Like
that was the context of what I said. If you read between the words. But basically, he works out that the murderer in that first episode is the vicar. The vicar has killed his own brother, who is a womanising old buffoon played by the Major from Fawlty Towers. And he says, and basically he works it out, and then he says, "You've confessed to me now, so that's enough for me. I'm just going to leave and leave it up to you to decide whether you turn yourself into the police or not." It's like, that sums up what is wrong with the Catholic Church and having a priest working as a detective. If you're happy to just say, "Okay, you did it, you've told me, just at least you've repented with God, you can go on your own way." It's like, no, fuck off. Report him to the police.
So, oh, I'm so glad you've taken up the mantle. You've taken up the Catholic bashing mantle.
Well, no, but that is insane, isn't it?
It's all fucking insane.
It's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Anyway, that is my final word on Father Brown. That's why I agree that Father Brown is a brilliant detective, because you would need to be a brilliant detective to work out what happened. Like me. But I cannot countenance a man of the cloth who is happy to just accept a confession and then not report the murderer to the police. So for me, Father Brown, very intelligent man, but stick to reading stuff out of books and telling people what number hymns and stuff.
So the guillotine, or guillotine, if you will, if you want to trump your one-for-one victory of this episode, I want you to tell me when you think the last beheading in France was, as like a death penalty.
Okay. Well, what were we? We were like 1950 something, 1955 or 1957 or something like that.
Yeah, it was like late 50s. That was hanging.
Yeah. But so we got rid of it then. The French would have definitely been after that. So I'm going to say 1963.
It was 3 years after this programme was made in 1977.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Guillotine. A beheading by guillotine in 1977.
Yeah.
That's insane.
No river jokes.
There's really no river jokes. I think that may be... You may have just conjured up the darkest ever end to an episode of the Detective Inspectors.
It's been a hard week.
Fair enough. I understand. Okay, well let's close it out. Thank you everyone, and by everyone I mean the listener, for tuning in.
Hey Richard.
Richard or Rich, I think I think there may be two listeners, both with the same name, bizarrely.
Yeah.
But thank you for listening. It's been fun. I think we've had fun on this one. We'll be back with, please God, a proper detective programme with a policeman in it. Because it has been too long. It has been way too long.
Oh, you're longing for the heady days of LA heat.
I am. Who'd have thought I'd yearn for Lethal Weapon, the poor man's Lethal Weapon. Okay, so we'll be back with something much more well thought out and chosen. And I've been Marcus Braeburn.
Hey, I've been Tabby.
And together we have been
the
Detective
Inspectors. Hey. Thank you, guys. Oh, by the way, if you want to contact us, it's the Detective Inspectors at gmail.com.
Or on Twitter at detect_inspect. Please do that and follow us. We've got 19 followers on Twitter. It would really make me happy to get up to a magical 25 by the end of 2018.
Literally, hamster doctor has more questions than we have followers.
It's true. It's true. There's almost more severed heads in this episode. There are certainly more mentions of twigs in this episode than we have followers on Twitter. Sorry.
Twitter.
Okay, thanks a lot, everyone. Goodbye.
Garden's got no walls. No, it's got walls. It's got no doors.
It's not a secret.
It seems we are. Cheers, guys.
Detective Inspector.